Welcome to this continuing section on truth matters. Specifically, what I wanted to talk to you today is about the characteristics of truth. Truth has absolute identifiable characteristics, just like everything in nature has some kind of characteristics that we could know something by. For instance, if I had a diamond, which I have a diamond on my wedding ring, that diamond has certain characteristics. We describe it by its color, its cut, its molecular composition. There's various characteristics to a diamond that we would want to know if we were going to go out and purchase a diamond. There are synthetic diamonds, cubic zirconias, and if you pay as much for a synthetic or man-made diamond as you do for a natural diamond, you're basically going to get ripped off. So when it comes to the truth, I don't want to get ripped off, and I know you don't either. So if we're going to be truth detectives, it's going to serve us greatly if we will take the time to understand the characteristics of truth. There's 6 basic characteristics that have been identified concerning truth. Now there may be more, but there's 6 basic ones that I like to think about. The first one is that it's absolute. It's also correspondent. It also has coherence. It's universal. It's exclusive, and it's objective. I want to take a little bit of time and go over those 6 characteristics, and we may break this down into a couple different sessions. But when we talk about truth, you know, today a lot of times people think truth is relative. But see, that really goes against the very nature, the very first characteristic of truth itself. Truth is what we call absolute. It is not relative. If something is absolute, that describes its very fundamental firm nature. In other words, it's not changing. Truth is not relative. It is not dependent upon anything else for its existence or to describe it. It is just what is. When we think of something that's absolute, if we were to describe an absolute ruler, say the King of England at one time was the absolute power or government of England, then he was the final place. The buck stopped there. He was the absolute power. So too, truth is absolute. When we talk about it being absolute, it's perfect in nature. It's pure in its nature. It's not contaminated. It is not relative. It is not dependent upon anything else. You know, we cannot all have our own truth. If we all had our own truth, then that's really not describing truth. That's describing a perspective, an opinion. You certainly are entitled to your opinion as well as I having my own opinion. I happen to like chocolate. Now you might like vanilla. That's a perspective and that's an opinion. And you may think that vanilla is better than chocolate. But again, see, that is not describing truth. That's describing an opinion and a perspective. When it comes to truth, truth is absolute. It is what is fundamental, foundational. It exists outside of anything else. It does not depend on anything else for it to be described, for it to exist. That's why in the Bible, many times, God is described as, I am the only God. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God. Also, God is described as true because He is the source of all. He is absolute. He is absolute in power. He is absolute in definition. He is absolute in all that we see. Everything stops with God. You know, many times people do mix this up because it is promoted a lot of times in our cultures today that, you know, people think in terms of, well, that's just, it's all relative. It's just your idea. And what makes your idea better than my idea? And so again, when we talk about truth, especially if we're going to be truth detectives, if truth really does matter, then we've got to understand that truth, by its very nature, is absolute. Some people have said, well, you know, if the tree falls and no one's in the woods to hear it, does it make any noise? See, in many ways, that's just a ridiculous proposition. Of course it makes noise, because the noise that that tree makes is not dependent upon my presence or not. It It is a fundamental law of nature. Just like the law of gravity. Gravity is something that works. It always works. It is just a fundamental law of truth, because that's what God has designed it, and that's how it is. God says He is true. God is the source of all life. God defines what is true, not us, not mankind. And if we're going to be truth detectives, it's going to serve us well to understand that truth is not relative, it's absolute.